When we speak of mindfulness, we are really speaking of a way of living that goes beyond a technique or a temporary moment of calm. It is the art of inhabiting this very moment fully, without being pulled into the regrets of the past or the anxieties of the future. Often we believe we are present, yet much of our day is spent in a kind of mental autopilot, moving from one task to another while our attention drifts elsewhere. The practice of mindfulness is about reclaiming this attention, redirecting it into the now, and experiencing life with a clarity and freshness that is often lost in the busyness of our thoughts. To truly understand mindfulness, we must begin by acknowledging that our minds are constantly generating stories, judgments, and interpretations about everything we experience. This mental chatter can be so habitual that we barely notice it. It becomes the background noise of our lives. And yet, this constant commentary often filters and distorts our perception of reality. When we are mindful, we set aside those filters. We don't push thoughts away or fight them. We simply let them be, allowing ourselves to observe without clinging, without needing to react. In this state of awareness, even the smallest experiences can become profound. The sound of rain tapping on the window, the warmth of a cup of tea in your hands, the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, all of these can take on a richness when we bring our full attention to them. Mindfulness is not about escaping the world. It is about stepping into it more deeply, with an open heart and unclouded vision. Think about how often we miss these simple moments because our attention is somewhere else. We may be sitting with someone we care about, but instead of listening to their words, we are planning what to say next, or thinking about an email we need to send, or replaying a conversation from yesterday. Mindfulness invites us to pause and truly listen not only to others, but to ourselves, to the world, to the subtle sensations and signals that life is constantly offering us. It's important to realize that mindfulness is not a state we achieve once and then keep forever. It is something we return to again and again in every moment. The mind will wander. This is its nature. The gift of mindfulness is that it doesn't demand perfection. It simply asks for our attention and our willingness to begin again. In this way, mindfulness is gentle. It does not scold or judge when we drift away. It simply reminds us that we can always come back to this breath, this step, this moment. When we understand mindfulness in this way, it becomes less about doing and more about being. It becomes a way of inhabiting our own life fully, without rushing past it, without waiting for some future moment to finally bring us peace. The truth is, this moment is the only place peace can be found, and in remembering that, we open the door to a deeper, more intimate connection with life itself. Modern science has begun to confirm what ancient traditions have known for centuries, that the state of our mind profoundly shapes the state of our body. When we practice mindfulness, we are not only engaging in a mental exercise, we are actually influencing the chemistry and wiring of our brain. Studies in neuroscience show that consistent mindfulness practice can alter brain structure, strengthening the areas responsible for focus, emotional regulation, and empathy, while reducing activity in the regions that trigger fear and anxiety. It's as if we are reprogramming the brain to respond to life with greater clarity, steadiness, and compassion. When we are stressed or caught in constant worry, the body's stress response is activated again and again, flooding us with hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This may be useful in moments of real danger, but when it becomes our default state, it drains our energy, weakens our immune system, and clouds our thinking. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. By bringing our awareness to the present moment, we calm the nervous system, signaling to the body that it is safe. The heart rate slows, the breath deepens, and the body begins to repair and restore itself naturally. But the benefits don't stop at the physical level. Psychologists have found that mindfulness changes our relationship to thoughts and emotions. Instead of being swept away by them, we learn to observe them with a little more distance. This shift can be life-changing. Imagine the difference between being caught in a storm and watching the storm from a safe shelter. The storm still exists, but it no longer has the same power to overwhelm you. Even more fascinating is how mindfulness appears to enhance the brain's capacity for empathy and compassion. Functional MRI scans show increased activity in the parts of the brain associated with understanding others' feelings and perspectives. This means mindfulness doesn't just benefit us individually, it changes the way we relate to the world. We become more patient, more open, and more capable of responding to others with kindness rather than reacting from habit or frustration. There is also a cumulative effect. Each time we practice, we are reinforcing new neural pathways, much like strengthening a muscle through repeated use. Over time, this makes it easier to remain centered even in difficult situations. We start to notice that we don't get pulled into arguments as quickly, that setbacks don't derail us as much, and that moments of joy and connection feel richer and more vivid. Science gives us language and evidence for these transformations, but it is in our own experience that the truth comes alive. The feeling of a calmer mind, the ease in the body, the quiet strength that grows within. These are the real proofs. Mindfulness is not just an idea to be understood. It is a living practice that reshapes who we are from the inside out. And when we see that change in ourselves, we also begin to see the world with new eyes. In mindfulness practice, the breath is often referred to as an anchor, not because it ties us down, but because it keeps us steady when the currents of the mind start to pull us away. The breath is always here, always happening in the present moment, and this makes it a perfect guide back to awareness. No matter where the mind wanders, the simple act of returning to the inhale and the exhale can gently bring us home to ourselves. When we focus on the breath, we are not trying to control it or make it perfect. We are simply noticing it, its rhythm, its texture, the way it feels as it enters and leaves the body. Some breaths are shallow, some are deep, some feel smooth, others may feel tight or uneven. The point is not to judge them, but to allow them to be as they are. In that allowing, we begin to quiet the noise of the mind. Thoughts may still arise, but the breath becomes a stable point of attention, like the calm eye in the center of a storm. The beauty of using the breath as an anchor is that it is always with us. Wherever we are, in a meeting, in traffic, at the dinner table, we can take a conscious breath and reconnect with the present moment. This can be especially powerful in moments of stress or emotional turbulence, when we feel the mind racing or the body tensing. Pausing to notice the breath interrupts the chain reaction. It creates a small space where we can choose how to respond, rather than automatically reacting. Sometimes people say, "I can't meditate because my mind won't stop thinking." But the purpose of focusing on the breath is not to stop thinking. It is to relate differently to our thoughts. Each time the mind wanders and we notice it, that moment of noticing is mindfulness. And when we return to the breath, we strengthen the habit of coming back. Over time, this simple repetition rewires the mind to be more present and less carried away by distraction. There is also something deeply grounding about breath awareness. As we feel the air moving in and out of the body, we are reminded that life itself is flowing through us. This is not an abstract concept, it is a living, tangible experience. Each breath is unique, and yet we rarely notice it unless we bring our attention there. By doing so, we awaken a sense of appreciation for something we often take for granted. As the breath settles, the mind begins to settle, and in that stillness we may notice a subtle shift, a softening, a spaciousness, a quiet sense of being held by the present moment. The breath becomes more than a physical process. It becomes a doorway into presence, a reminder that we already have everything we need to return to ourselves. And when we know how to return, we can never truly be lost. Most of the time, we move through life without questioning the constant stream of thoughts in our mind. They arise so automatically, so persistently, that we assume they are true simply because they are there. But thoughts are not facts, they are mental events, appearing and disappearing in the same way. Clouds move across the sky. Some drift in lightly, others arrive heavy and dark, but none of them are permanent. When we begin to truly see this, something in us shifts. We are no longer completely at the mercy of our own thinking. In mindfulness practice, we learn to witness our thoughts from a slight distance, not pushing them away, not clinging to them, but allowing them to appear and pass in their own time. Imagine sitting by the side of a river and watching leaves float by. Each leaf is a thought. You don't have to pick it up, you don't have to chase it downstream, you simply notice it and let it pass. Sometimes a thought will catch your attention, and you'll find yourself following it without even realizing. But the moment you notice that, you can return to simply watching. That moment of noticing is the essence of mindfulness. This same approach applies to emotions. We often fuse our sense of self with how we feel in a given moment. When anger rises, we might say, "I am angry," as if anger is our entire identity. But anger, like all emotions, is energy passing through. When we observe it without immediately acting on it, we see that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The same is true for sadness, for joy, for anxiety. None of them last forever. They move like waves in the ocean, and we are the vast awareness beneath those waves. Observing without attachment doesn't make life dull or emotionless. Quite the opposite. It allows us to experience life more vividly without being blinded by reactivity. When you can feel sadness without being consumed by it, you can also feel joy more deeply without clinging to it. You become present for the full range of human experience, knowing that each state will shift and transform in its own time. This is not about indifference, it's about freedom. Freedom from being yanked in every direction by whatever thought or feeling happens to show up. Freedom to choose a response rather than falling into an automatic reaction. And with that freedom comes a greater capacity for compassion, both for ourselves and for others. We begin to see that everyone we meet is also navigating their own passing storms of thought and emotion, and that understanding softens our judgments. Over time, this practice creates a stable inner space, like the stillness beneath the surface of the sea. No matter what winds blow or what waves rise, that stillness remains untouched. And in living from that place, we find a peace that cannot be taken away. Mindfulness does not need to be reserved for quiet moments on a meditation cushion. In fact, some of its greatest power is found when we weave it into the rhythm of everyday life. Each ordinary activity offers a chance to return to presence, to meet the moment fully without being distracted by the constant pull of the mind. The practice becomes less about creating special conditions and more about realizing that every moment is an opportunity for awareness. Take eating, for example. So often we eat while scrolling through our phones, watching television, or thinking about something entirely unrelated to the meal in front of us. We barely notice the taste, the texture, or even the act of chewing. But when we bring mindfulness to eating, something changes. We slow down. We actually see the colors of the food, feel its weight on the fork, smell its aroma before the first bite. We notice the complexity of flavors, the sensations in the mouth, the subtle moment when hunger gives way to fullness. Eating becomes not just a means to an end, but an experience to savor. Walking is another simple but profound opportunity. Most of the time, we walk to get somewhere, thinking about the destination rather than the act itself. But when we walk mindfully, we bring our attention to the movement of the body, the feeling of the feet making contact with the ground, the way the air moves against the skin. The journey itself becomes alive, and the destination becomes less important than the presence we bring to each step. Even the most routine tasks, washing dishes, folding laundry, brushing teeth, can become moments of mindfulness. Instead of rushing through them to move on to something more important, we can use them as cues to return to the present. The warmth of water on the hands, the scent of fresh clothes, the sound of bristles against teeth. These small details anchor us in the here and now. Of course, our minds will still wander. That is natural. The key is to notice when attention has drifted and to gently bring it back to whatever we are doing. No judgment, no frustration, just a simple return. Each time we do this, we strengthen the habit of presence. Over time, mindfulness becomes less of a practice we do and more of a way we live. The beauty of integrating mindfulness into daily life is that it transforms the ordinary into something extraordinary. We begin to notice the sunlight streaming through a window, the sound of laughter in another room, the way a cool breeze feels on the skin. Life stops being something that happens while we are lost in thought, and becomes something we are fully participating in, moment by moment. And in that participation, we discover that joy is not hidden in distant goals or rare moments. It is here, in the simple act of being awake to what is happening now. The real transformation that mindfulness brings is not in a single meditation session or a fleeting moment of stillness, but in what happens over time when the practice becomes a natural part of life. At first, mindfulness may feel like something you have to remember to do, a conscious effort to pause and pay attention. But slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin to carry that awareness with you. It becomes the lens through which you see the world, and it changes the way you relate to yourself, to others, and to life itself. With consistent practice, self-awareness deepens. You begin to recognize patterns in your thoughts and behaviors that may have gone unnoticed before. You see how often you react from habit rather than choice, how quickly the mind can create stories that have little to do with reality. And in this recognition, you gain the space to choose differently. That space is where true freedom lives, not in controlling the world around you, but in being able to respond with clarity no matter what arises. Emotional resilience also grows naturally from this practice. Life will still bring its challenges, but your relationship to those challenges changes. Instead of being swept away by difficulty, you learn to meet it with steadiness. Stress may still appear, sadness may still visit, but you are less likely to be consumed by them. You begin to trust your capacity to move through discomfort without losing your center. Mindfulness also nurtures compassion. The more you observe your own thoughts and emotions without judgment, the more you extend that same acceptance to others. You realize that everyone is carrying their own unseen burdens, navigating their own storms of thought and feeling. This understanding softens the edges of impatience, criticism, and resentment, replacing them with patience, kindness, and empathy. Relationships often shift in subtle but powerful ways as a result. There is a quiet joy that begins to emerge too, not the kind that depends on circumstances, but a deeper contentment that comes from being fully present. You find yourself appreciating simple moments more deeply, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of rain, the comfort of a shared silence. These are not moments you have to chase. They are always here, waiting to be noticed. Over time, mindfulness weaves itself into the fabric of your life so fully that it no longer feels like a separate practice. It becomes a way of being, a quiet foundation that supports you through both the calm and the chaos. And as that foundation strengthens, you discover that peace, clarity, and compassion are not things you have to find outside yourself. They are qualities that have been within you all along, simply waiting for your attention.